This is the first race. He rode the Frankfurt race before this race, but this is his first race back after that dramatic crash at the start of the year. And that's a reference, Christian, to still be here at this point.
Oh, for sure. I think he's going to have a great Tour de France, in fact. This was the big question mark. How would he get through this week? And he was scared of the first day. He was scared of the second day. He's been easily up there in front of some of his teammates. So he had nothing, in hindsight, nothing to worry about. He's looking great.
We sat and talked to him. He showed us his finger. Part of his finger is frozen. It will never work again. It's in a splint, and he can't pull on the handlebars, and he's a sprinter. And he said, I'm just hope, he says, I can get through the first 3 days. But he's been ever present. He's going to make the finish in Sacramento.
Yeah, and that would be interesting, because we all expect that once everybody's dragged their bodies through this part of California, through the individual time trial, over the very difficult hills of Santa Rosa, that it should be a sprint royale on the streets of Sacramento. And will John Degenkolb be able to hold on to his handlebars properly to sprint with some of the best riders in the world? Now there's a three-man leading group forming. Zandio on the back there, number 28. They've been joined by the Canadian rider who's just popped on the back there, number 173, who's been very consistent in getting over the top of the climbs in first position. And that, of course, is Adam de Vos. He's in the orange jersey there. Now, this is probably a lot better for Tom Squeenzer. It was an awful long way to ride on your own. 25 kilometers to go. It's probably going to take these riders about 30 to 32 minutes. It's downhill to the outskirts of South Lake Tahoe now, but then once they get into the outskirts of town, they've got that nasty little 2-kilometer uphill finish, and it pretty much is a mountain top finish, hilltop finish if you'd like to call it that. And there are points available at the top of the finishing line for the King of the Mountains competition. This is when they came back just a few moments ago. I take my hats off to this team, the rally racing team. They have done very well to be present throughout many of these breakaways. They've had lots of riders in the breakaway group. They've been aggressive, and let's not forget they are leading currently. There's the official 25 kilometer to go board just over on the side. Rally racing team have been present, and as I say, they are leading the Lexus King of the Mountains competition with their rider Evan Huffman. So Zandio is in the dark black and blue jersey. Now, they must be wondering, Team Sky, what are their tactics going to be in this race? Because we haven't talked very much about Vasily Kirienka, the Belarusian rider who is the world time trial champion. He had a nasty crash a couple of days ago. He's been nursing himself through these days. The man who was expected to lead for Team Sky, Peter Kenyuk, he had a very, very nasty crash and, in fact, had to abandon with a broken collarbone. We're looking at the experienced riders of the race. Xavier Zandio is the oldest at 39, alongside Haimar Zubeldia. And that is him right there. 21st Century Fox is one of the sponsors of Team Sky, so that's one of the reasons why it was important for Team Sky to ride well here in the Amgen Tour of California. The 13 riders are chasing this group now, and they've really opened up the advantage over that 13-man group. It's 1 minute and 10 seconds, so we've now got a good workmanlike group at the front of the race with that 1 minute advantage. That corresponds to almost a kilometer in physical distance between those two, and then another 2 minutes back to the main field. But I think the main field now, once they've gone over Luther Pass, will start to nurture thoughts of a possible comeback. But it's going to take a concerted effort by quite a large number of teams if they want to do that. And even so, they've got to be pretty careful on the run up towards the finish, because the important thing is, as we go back to the main field, it seems to have turned off a Taylor Phinney. He's the rider all on his own now doing the pacemaking, followed by there you can see Giant Alpecin. They're organized around their man, and the man is Lawrence Tendam. Although it is really good to see getting himself into this group, John Degenkolb. And if you just have a quick look, John Degenkolb, he's the 5th place rider there from Giant Alpecin. And if you just look at his finger there, you can see that little blue covering on his finger. That's the splint that has been used. to help nurse the healing, because the healing process has not been completed yet. Moving back, taking a bit of a backseat. I think all of a sudden Team BMC have said, like, we don't want to leave too much effort on this race here this afternoon just to try and get ourselves a stage victory, because I don't think BMC can lay too much effort on the road here now, because they've got to think about tomorrow. Tomorrow is exceedingly important, a 20-kilometer individual time trial. If you've got good rested legs, you can make big chunks of time.
Oh, for sure. This is, I mean, right there, one of the best time trials in the world. Taylor Finney on the front doing a lot of work, but it doesn't really matter how good Taylor does tomorrow because he's way off GC. But you know what? At 3 minutes and 5 seconds with 22K to go, a lot of it being downhill, I don't see this coming back here, Paul.
It's going to be very difficult. It would take something very special from the main field, and just looking at the main field, it would have taken Team Tinkoff and Team BMC working together to make sure that they would absolutely pull back that 3:05. And the fact that it still remains at 3:05, every few kilometers that go by, the guys at the front of the main peloton will be saying, well, we're not going to do it today. And they'll psychologically begin to give up.
Oh, yeah, and it goes by very quickly at 80 kilometers an hour. If you're doing 1 kilometer at 55 seconds, I mean, this is going to go back. The next 10 kilometers is going to go by more or less in 10 minutes. So there's a couple bumps on the way. The last kilometer, 1.7 kilometer, is pretty rough. But apart from that, it's going to go back real quick.
As we look at the riders here, they're just freewheeling off this little plateau at the moment. That's where we're going, right down. We're descending from the Luther Pass. Still a bit of green left, but it's leveling out. The finish hill is not easy because the finish is right on the top. So it's going to be a tough sprint up to the finishing line. But basically, that's the only challenge left now for these three leaders.
That's the three leaders, but there are two races. You can see looking at the flags, there is still a certain amount of wind in the area. But even though the three leaders are thinking about winning the stage victory, for the guys trying to win this race overall, even if they're sprinting for 19th or 20th place, they've got to be very attentive, because this is a nasty uphill climb. We come off a beautiful approach down the Frontier Road and then turn off and start to go up that hill. 2 kilometers, you can make 10, 15, 20 seconds. Alaphilippe will know that, and I'm sure also Brent Bookwalter, he would maybe like to move up a little bit in the overall stand. A 3 minutes advantage, and that got wiped out because over the final few kilometers she was well up to looking like to win the stage, but the headwind finish really ate into her advantage, and she got caught with 6 kilometers to go. In the men's race, the Amgen Tour of California, the overall standings at the start of the day looked like that. Julien Alaphilippe leading Peter Stettner by 22 seconds. George Bennett, the Kiwi, in third place at 37 seconds. And Brent Bookwalter in fourth place at 40 seconds. But it could all change. The wind in the Swiss flag there, just giving you an indication of how violent the wind is. If you look at the trees there, you can see the trees are starting to sway, and that's because of these gusts.
So at the moment, we're watching the riders beginning to find the weather a little bit cloud at the moment, because, as you can see, we're having a little bit of trouble now getting our pictures out there on the course. But it's all action today, and it has been a very active race. The whole thing about this year's Tour, it's been a fabulous bike race. It's
been a difficult race to commentate. I mean, I've looked at all of the statistics over the last few years, and you might as well throw them all out of the window, because everything seems to change around so dramatically. But even so, today's finish is going to be extremely important for the guys trying to win this race overall, because there's two races going on at the moment. One is to win the stage and get individual glory, but the other one is also to keep a very close eye on the guys trying to win this race overall, because seconds, we've seen it last year, be won by 3 seconds. So you've got to be attentive on the final climb.
Well, George Bennett has just managed to get back into that front group, so he must have got a very fast wheel change, so at least he's back up there. And that's good for George, because he's having probably one of the best rides of his life so far in this race.
Yeah, he is, and it's an important comeback for one or two of these riders. And I mean, Peter Stettner is sitting in second place overall, and we've seen a lot of work being done by his team, Trek Segafredo. I think they feel confident, and it's always in a team, the riders share a lot of information, and you know, Peter Stettner, what a story to come back like that, and he will have talked to his teammates, and that's why I think they've got confidence in him.
Now, forget about the comeback with Pete. This is some of the best bike riding he's ever done in his entire life. I mean, he was really, really strong going up into Santa Barbara, but what can he do here today? He needs to do and take some more time out, before the Folsom time trial tomorrow. He's not a big guy. It's a flat time trial. If there was a climb in it, I would be a lot better with him going doing a big good ride. But Folsom time trial, pretty much dead flat. He needs to have a good ride here today.
Well, at the moment, the gap is just over 3 minutes, and the chase group, the remnants of the break, still sits at 55.
Well, 10 miles and 16 kilometers of racing to go to the finish now, and that leading group of three, Zandio, Squeens and De Vos, have a 55-second advantage over the chasers. 13 riders in that chase group. This is the remnants of the main field, although they have switched off the pressure, which is why the numbers in this group have started to swell. They're leaving up to Taylor Phinney on the front. Taylor Phinney not too worried about his position in tomorrow's time trial today. It's about laying down the foundations for Brent Bookwalter, for Rowan Dennis, and for their Olympic champion, former Olympic champion, Sammy Sanchez. That was a quick, brief look there at the final few kilometers. Now we're getting on to the point where we're starting to meander down the Pioneer Trail as we move down to the outskirts of South Lake Tahoe. Just sitting on the back there, Xavier Zandio. Just in front of him, Tom Squeens, Adam De Vos. They're now thinking in the back of their mind now, how do we get this victory? It's a very difficult climb, I have to say. Once they turn to the right, they go under the banner of 2 kilometers to go. There's a sharp right-hand bend, and it's like a wall, literally a wall in front of you, straight up. You can't see the finishing structure. Then you turn left, and you see the 1 kilometer to go banner, and you climb up to that. And after that banner, you turn to the right again, and then again, you still haven't yet seen the finish, but all you see are these walls of climb straight in front of you. Lots of concentration. All of the major contenders are happy to be in this group. As I said, Alaphilippe, he's been bouncing around. There he is, just a little bit further back there. And he may well try and use the opportunity of today's uphill finish to grab a few seconds here and there, because he knows last year he was there. He is over on the left-hand side. Great bike handler. Former cyclocross rider, picked up very early on. In fact, he went through the Ethics Quick Step Development Squad before he came to the top hand. And being paced through there by none other than Mr. Tom Bonin himself. And what a man to have looking after you when you're 23 years of age in the final of a race like this. What an inspiration.
Well, the peloton looks to me as though it's swelled a little bit here, change of direction. We're getting down inside the last 16 kilometers of the day. We're inside the last 16 kilometers of the day. And the peloton looks to be that little bit bigger. I'd like to say we're seeing the changing face of world cycling, but we've got the oldest man in the breakaway right now against two youngsters who have barely turned 20 years of age. But Zandio has never won a race, you know, since 2008. When he was 31 years of age. We were probably talking about him being an old man back in 2008.
Well, we were, but you know, he's one of those guys who's important to have in a team. He's solid. You can count on him, even if he hasn't. Been riding at the front end of the race. He's always there. He can go away from training and come back and do exceptionally well when it comes to being called on to work for the team. But in a situation like this is again what we were talking about the other day, Christian. A guy like him, you don't get that many situations like this to win.
No, it's true. He's always a lieutenant. He's always out there as a road captain, trying to keep all the guys in line, up there on the front, doing the long, hard yards. And now he's up in the breakaway. But the hardest part is, though, Paul, is that if you're not put in those situations, you almost forget how to win. As a junior, I'm sure he was an amazing bike rider. He probably won a lot of races, but 10 years at the front. But I will say, if you're going to win a race and make it easier, it's going to come down to legs today at altitude.
Well, you're absolutely right there, because the finishing climb today is a leveler. There's no question. I don't think there's any question of tactics when it comes down to this last 1.8 kilometer climb. You've just got to go up it as hard as you can to get to the top. And if the damage is done, then you're going to be the first man across the finishing line. And that might pay for the... I don't like calling him an old. Spread out across the road. I think it's time out now for the main field. They realise they're not going to catch the breakaway group, and they're thinking back. They're already planning their race for tomorrow. But look at the time there. 4 hours and 40 minutes. This is the second longest stage of the race at 212 kilometres. Only 5 kilometres shorter than yesterday's stage, but the race finishes today at over 2,000 metres in altitude alongside one of the largest alpine lakes in the United States. The lake itself is a very deep lake at 1,650 feet. But the finishing line is at 6,003. Sometimes that's why you have a guy like him in the team, because he's always in the right place at the right time.
And let's not forget about Lawson Craddock not having the best ride in the world. He thought he was going to do much better. I thought he was going to do a lot better up Gibraltar. And so Cannondale needs some big result here too. So Tom's getting up there just like he did last year. He proved himself last year. He's up there for the win.
Well, I'd like to see Xavier Zandio get himself the victory, because at 39 years of age, he's not won a lot of races throughout his career. But, you know, when you cast your mind back just 12 months, the rider in the lime green jersey there, Tom Squeens, the race that he won here at the Amgen Tour of California was at the top of a very nasty climb. So he'll be thinking back 12 months and thinking, I've got this in the bag.
Maybe. 10 kilometers to go. It's just over 6 miles to the finishing line. And that'll be music to all of their ears here as they keep on the pressure. 50 seconds to the remnants of their breakaway, and 2:50, 2 minutes 50. They're beginning to close in again.
Well, they're just beginning to close in, but I'm not sure it's going to be too much. Although, as we go back to the main field, somebody's all of a sudden thrown caution to the wind. And when you throw caution to the wind, it's the youngest team in the race,
amazing,
Actions Bergen-Hayman.
Hey, these guys are fearless, and they've been lighting up.
Wonderful.
They've been lighting up the race since the start. They've been one of the strongest teams in the entire race, which is fantastic considering that this is the best peloton that we've ever had here at the Amgen Tour of California.
They have the 5 youngest riders in this race on their team, and they have been the animators of this race. Every day they've had somebody up there. They had Logan in the attack today. He's still in the chase group, and they're still riding like this. These are the 3 men, and now it's desperate moments, but the roads are flat until we get to the finishing approach.
Yes, this is Frontier Trail. The riders are heading down towards South Lake Tahoe, and of course it would be nice if they went straight down to finish by this beautiful lake here, one of the cleanest lakes in the United States. But no, the race organizers are taking a nasty little turn to the right, and it's 2 kilometers, 1.2 miles uphill, and that's going to make a big difference. And even the young team there, we're talking about action with Nielsen Paulus, the way he goes uphill, he could be looking for a cut. If you've got the acceleration and you're a climber, we've seen Julien Alaphilippe, and I'm convinced that Julien Alaphilippe will look for a few seconds here and there. He wants to win this bike race that he feels he was almost robbed by 3 seconds last year by a great Peter Sagan, but he needs seconds here and there because he's not a great individual time trialist.
Well, I got to tell you what, we get 2 races for the price of 1 here today. We get the guys that are going for the stage win, and we're going to see the guys coming in the peloton. This is great. But I just got a message here from George Hincapie, the owner of the Hincapie Racing Team, and had Tom Scoons last year on his team. He's saying that Tom's is going to win today.
Well, I think if he casts his mind back 12 months to that victory he got in the Amgen Tour of California, he will not be afraid of this climb up to the finish. But again, when you're in a 3-man breakaway group, when you've been away for a long period of time in a big breakaway, you've got to be careful and not over-assume. And because it's such a long climb, he's got to bide his time and not attack as soon as they start going uphill.
Well, I'll tell you what, Paul, I rode it this morning, and it was windy. I don't know how windy it is outside of this very hot box that we're sitting here right now, but as you take that right-hand turn, you go straight up, it's a little bit headwind, take a left, and it's all tailwind, and that's where you're going to make that difference, because that's where you're attacking. You're not going to have any support being behind. You're not going to get any draft. And the right turn, and then it bends all the way to the left to the finish line. You're going to have to make the difference between that last left-hand bend, just like the women did earlier this morning.
Well, they're riding now at full bore back in that pack then. It's Giant Alberthammer doing. We are heading towards the start of that finishing climb. In miles, a 3.5. In kilometers, 5.7 kilometers. And then it's the climb up to the finish. They're going to make it, I think, at 2.5 minutes to the peloton, but the peloton are now really angry as they start to go. This is the chase group in our picture.
Yeah, and they are also trying to break free, because all of a sudden at 40 seconds behind the 3 leaders, they're starting to say, hey, we got a chance of getting ourselves a stage victory here this afternoon. And that's what when you're in a long breakaway like this, you can't throw away a chance. Christian, you know what it's like in a long breakaway like this. When it's going to succeed, all of a sudden you start to think of yourself, this is Christmas come early.
Yeah, you have to really want it. When it's so hard, it's like a mental, tactical issue that you have with all these other guys. You have 11 guys. You don't know how strong they are. Everyone's suffering. Everyone's been hurting for the last 4 hours at high altitude. But these are the 3 guys. These are the guys who are going to be battling it out here at the finish line here at Heavenly.
but it's worth the little of extra effort, and you're in that group behind. 40 seconds, that's around about 600 meters. In the long straightaways, they'll start to see the cars. Well, all of a sudden, you can see the fractioning off the front of this chase group here down to 11 riders. Around the long straights, they'll be able to see the cars and the motorway bikes behind the leader. That will inspire them in this closing few minutes.
Oh, no doubt about that, but they have to also think, I have to leave a little bit in the gas tank to make it up that last climb.
They've no choice but to use all their energy here, because that chase group is also motivated because they're being chased in turn by the front half of the main peloton. Holding at 2:30, and Zandio there having to drive at the front. Little bit of a regrouping and a slowing down in the first chase on the road, which contains 11 riders.
The funny thing is, as Christian said, we do have 2 races here for the price of 1, because in the main field there's only seconds separating some of the riders in the top positions in the overall standings. Alaphilippe leads by 22 seconds. George Bennett is 37 seconds behind. Those few seconds can be extremely important going into the individual time trial and at the end of the race overall.
Whoa, this attack by Bouet, I think, has made his move in the chase group here, trying to bring it all back together. That was a 1-2 because his teammate Jesper Stuyvesant had gone. He got brought back.
Yeah, but these are not the best ways to pull back a group like this, because what happens in the group, you accelerate to a high speed, then you slow down, but what it does is it takes down the overall average speed of the chase group a little bit slower, where the 3 men in the front, they're constantly working at the same speed.
Especially gasping at air at altitude. This is 6,700 feet right here, so a lot of these guys aren't feeling so hot. But one of these guys right here on the left-hand side, this is one of the Wiggins riders. He is going really good.
Yes, it's all a question of who's got the final effort here, and as you said,
Mark Christian, this
at altitude, there's always a big chance of producing that final effort, and many of these riders from Team Wiggins, they've been working out at altitude before they came down to this race, so they'll be able to produce that effort and keep it going.
Yeah, Mark Christian has made his move here. I was in Croatia 2 or 3 weeks ago, and this guy had a great ride over there. He was obviously training for his long journey to California for this event. Gritting his teeth, he's going to try and put his back into this and slip away from the field. Be a big result for Team Wiggins, this. He's got time on his side. He's lost 16 minutes already.
But, Phil, he's got to bridge 55 seconds in the last 4 kilometres.
He's been a junior world pursuit champion.
Well, he's got the right amount of effort, and because of Al, just looking down the straight there, though, Phil, you can see there's hardly anyone. Well, having said that, in fact, Christian is just coming around the corner. This could be a pursuit at 4 kilometres to go over the final 2 kilometres.
Please, there's no way he's going to judge
He was the 4,000-metre world junior champion, and now he's approaching 4,000 metres. Let's see how he goes. But these boys know now, inside 4 kilometres to the finish, inside 2.5 miles to go. We're saying 2.6 as they get looking for the right turn to the finish. It's a little way yet.
Well, that turn to the finish comes at around about 1.9 kilometres. Then they turn to the right. A little bit off there you can see Christensen is trying to bridge, but he will have the advantage of being able to see the guys in front. And if they start to play little cat and mouse moves together, then he will eat into their advantage. He now goes past the 4 kilometre point.
Be a huge result, even if he hangs on to take 4th place for Mark Christian.
Well, I'll tell you what, that's the difference with doing the homework, being up at altitude, having that little bit extra in the tank. Sometimes you could be up to 3 to 4% better than someone who's not acclimatized.
Got to look at the face here, though, of the Spanish rider from Team Sky. Zandio dreaming of a first win since 2008. And that wasn't a road race win, that was the overall classification of a race in Spain called the Tour de Burgos.
Which in itself is a very difficult race, and now we start to see a little bit of help coming on board. Jesper Stuyvesant, I'm not sure. I actually said before that I didn't think this was the kind of finish for a guy like Jesper Stuyvesant. He's the guy in the white jersey, flicking his elbow there, but he had a great victory early on this year when he won himself a Kern, Brussels-Kern. Now, all of a sudden, there's firepower in this chase group, and Christian, you know what it's like. At this point, you don't want to have wasted a whole day's breakaway and just give up in a couple of kilometres from the end.
No, exactly. You don't want to wash it all away playing cat and mouse before this last climb. You need to keep on working together. Make sure you guys get to that last right-hand corner. Once you get to that right-hand corner, then it's game on. It comes down to legs, like we were saying earlier. This is a climb that is going to hurt really bad. It's not going to come too much to the tactics. It's going to be all legs.
Well, Adam DeVos in the centre there seems to have an affinity of racing here in the States. He is an American cyclist, even though he's got a Dutch-sounding name. And in Richmond, he was 9th in the Under-23 World Championship last year.
Well, when you say American, I think you mean a North American, because he's from Canada, actually, across the border.
Okay,
and
I'll give you that one.
Well, he is a North American, just like the first the first wearer of the yellow jersey in the Tour de France, who texted us a few bits of information about the Canadian riders yesterday. Alex Steeder, 2 kilometers to go.
Right
they
here.
are not far from the right-hand bend, and all of a sudden, when they take that right-hand bend, it's like a psychological slap in the face, because it's a wall straight in front of you.
Here we go, right-hand turn, straight up.
Well, as they start the right, they will see the slopes now, and then they've got a couple of left and rights before they see the finishing line. That's what they've seen now. At what point can you possibly attack here? Because this is a hill they probably don't know.
I don't think it's a question of an attack here. It's just a question of keeping the pressure on and see if anybody has any weakness. The guy who would like to make the attack, I'm pretty certain, as we got the information from George Kinhappy, is the rider in 3rd position there, Tom Screens. He knows what it's like to win up a climb like this. But I think, Christian, he needs to bide his time and wait till he gets to 400 or 500 meters to go.
I would agree. I mean, at this altitude, you only have one match, so make sure that you don't blow it at the wrong time. So this is, like I was saying earlier, I rode this climb this morning. This is not such of the hard part. You take a left, and that's quite steep, and then you'll have a tailwind after you take that left-hand turn. That's where I'd start thinking about attacking. You take that right, it's a little bit easier, and then it starts pitching up yet again.
1.7 kilometers. The summit peaks out at 6,600 feet. You know, that is the Col de Galibier. The average gradient 6%, but as we keep turning, it seems to get steeper. These are the 3 chasers. They can see, but I'm not sure they've got enough distance between here and the finish to catch up.
No, they had just taken a left on the left-hand corner. That's a tailwind. So this is one of the steepest parts on this climb. They take a right, and then it gets a little bit easier. And then it pitches up all the way, and it banks left all the way to the finish line.
Oh, it hurts. You just look at the body language of these riders, and when you see the shoulders start to rock a little bit like that, it's as if you're shouting down to the engine room on a big steamer to get a little bit more power. But unfortunately, there's no more coal in the boilers.
Well, I have to say that Tom Screens looks the most casual here, and he looks pretty cool, doesn't he? It's 1 kilometer to go. We're kicking up again. There is still turns before we see the finish. They don't get a great look at the finish line before they race towards it here. And this is Stuyvesant here. He seems to be on his own. He must have got away from Christian and Guarnieri.
Well, he's throwing caution to the wind there. I'm sure he can't get across in this final kilometre, but now's the moment when you really have to lay it all on the line. Zandier is the rider, the oldest rider in the race at 39 years of age in the black jersey from Team Sky. He comes around the inside of the corner, but just look how quickly the youngster there, Scoins, comes across onto his wheel. A little bit of respite, but it's an awful climb, this. You think you've got to the top, then it just kicks up once again. And they'll keep looking around the corner, and they won't see the finishing banner until the last possible moment.
Look at Stuyven, he's coming across quite quickly, but I was looking at those guys on the big chain ring, the first 2 guys.
Yeah.
Zandio,
yeah, that's what I was
you say that too?
Yeah.
That is not easy. I was definitely not in the big chain ring this morning.
They're being chased by the man that won the Belgian Classic race between Kuhne, Brussels-Kuhne, just in the month of February. He's gritting his teeth, can't see. There he is in the distance, and Zandio knows he's there as well. He's trying to hold something to try and win a race, for goodness sake, since 2008.
Yeah,
the man in black.
You don't look back at Stuyven. You're just looking at the 2 guys who you're with right now. And I've got to say that Tom's looks so confident right now, sitting there in 3rd position.
Well, it's not far till the sweeping left-hand bend, and then finally they will start to see the banner across the road. It looks so easy when you're sitting in an armchair like this, but from Stuyven here in number 87, it's a long gap to close down in the last 400 or 500 meters. Zandier must be thinking, what can I do to win this bike race? I haven't won for a long, long time, not since that Grand Prix of Burgos in 2008.
He's closing it because the boys at the front don't want to help each other, and he could take advantage of this and close the gap. Now, DeVos has taken a look over his shoulder. He's seen him coming. Zandio knows he's coming. I'm not sure Screens does. He's trying to put himself in a position for an attack.
Well, it's not surprising here, Phil. We're on the outskirts of Lake Tahoe. There's a number of casinos down here. This is the moment when you've got to play a very close game of poker if you want to win the stage. And you've got to not worry about the guy back there in 4th position. You've got to make sure that you play your cards right on the table.
This is a 3-up sprint for the line here. DeVos has opened it. Squinch grits his teeth. Xavier Zandio drops away. Tom Squinch is making this look quite easy as he comes away. A case of another stage win in this race for him. He did it last year. He's done it this year. And another win for Team Cannondale.
A brilliant win there. Stuyven is the rider who will come across the line in 4th place. He did everything to try and come across the gap, but unfortunately it was a bridge too far for the Belgian rider, and I must admit I'm pretty impressed with the ride that he's done up here, because he comes from the flatlands of Belgium, and I bet he wondered what this finishing climb was all about today.
I mean, that could be reminded of some of the highest altitude that he's ever even ridden his bicycle, up at 9,000 feet. But let's talk about Tom's. I mean, Tom's knew he was going to win 60 kilometers ago when he was attacking off the front when we thought it was a silly move, breaking it up.
That's a huge result for he's just 24 years of age last month. And look at this, Alaphilippe is not giving anything away. He gets the same time right at the front of the peloton. Looked over his shoulder to see if any of his nearest rivals might be gapped here.
Well,
there'll be a different time just there, for example.
Yeah, well, there you can see Peter Sagan coming across the line. They're not too worried because for him, it's all about winning stage victories, not finishing 4th or 5th. All of the big points had disappeared. He will slip across the line, but I did notice that Alaphilippe looked over his shoulder to see if there were any time gaps.
Ooh, but I think I just saw Paulus, though. He definitely lost some time. I think that was the rider in the white jersey, Nielsen Paulus, over 5th overall right now. I think he lost some time.
He may hold his 5th, but you never know.
Like first 60, well, no, I guess from 30 to 90.
They were the 2 best riders on the stage. They did every move together in tandem, and they finished 1st and 2nd. That was just.
24 years of age, he had the confidence, so we saw it from the last 2 kilometers. He was sitting in 3rd position, he watched the moves happening, and he knew, in fact, he was in the right gear, and that's another important thing when you make that final acceleration. I noticed DeVos was fumbling with his gear to try and find the right gear to sprint, but Squeens just knew exactly how much power he had and where to apply it.
And like you were saying, these were easily the 2 strongest guys out of that 18-man breakaway. They went away early in this stage. It was a bit of too early. They realized that, let the group come back to them, and went yet again with 30 kilometers to go, about 20 miles to the finish.
Isn't it funny how we talk about team tactics and team plans? When we talked about Team Cannondale before the start of this race, it was Lawson Craddock, it was Andrew Talansky, and it's the other riders in the team who've so far come up with the glory. Ben King with that victory of his in the overall standings. Now Tom Squeens at 24 years of age gets them victory number 2.
Racing on home soil virtually here, because Cannondale, of course, is the American bicycle company, and that was a superb result for him. But Julien Alaphilippe will keep his yellow jersey, and on 1 or 2 of those riders behind him, he may have snicked a couple of seconds. We'll have to wait for the final results.
I'll tell you one thing I'd forgotten about this guy. In fact, we're back down there with Peter Sagan. He's enjoyed his ride today, but I think he'll have a back seat tomorrow when it comes down to the individual time trial. But he should still lead the green competition.
Actually, there's a Julien Alaphilippe, the yellow jersey holder, but it did happen. Nielsen Paulus did slip down 1 place. Lawrence Sandam moved up ahead of him in 5th place.
And Lawrence fell off today, so let's hope he comes out okay tomorrow, because he's now into 5th place overall. All this will be confirmed. Of course, it's the time trial tomorrow. It means the riders start in the reverse order of the standings, and this man will start last with everybody ahead of him. Here, let's have a look at the Coca-Cola stage results. Tom Squeens gets the win ahead of Adam DeVos. Xavier Zandio in 3rd place for Team Sky, and then Jesper Stuyven failed by just about 20 seconds to get onto the podium. And Restrepo from Team Katusha from Colombia, he is in 5th place. Looking for the big names, the race leader, 43 seconds back, but best of the rest, and that's important for Alaphilippe. Rowan Dennis up there too, didn't concede time, neither did Lawson Craddock. They'll go head-to-head in the time trial.
Yes, that's going to be an important thing. Brent Bookwalter was attentive there in 11th place. Peter Stettner in 12th place. The comeback kid who at the start of the day is in 2nd place overall. But I think all of those positions will get jumbled around quite a fraction tomorrow. The leader of the King of the Mountains competitions presented by Lexus is there, Evan Huffman. He had a good day in defending that jersey. Shouldn't have to worry too much tomorrow over the 20-kilometer individual time trial, but he'd be very happy to have seen the performance of his teammate in the breakaway. And one thing I'd forgotten about Tom Squeens, in fact, when we talk about our colleague Jens Voigt, Tom Squeens was a winner of the Peace Race, which is one of the toughest races in the world, and it's over some pretty nasty roads.
Did Jens win that?
Jens won it too, yeah. Yes, Jens Voigt won that a number of years ago, and it was regarded, if you like, the Tour de France many years ago, as we see plenty of other riders climbing up towards the finishing line at South Lake Tahoe. Well, I'll tell you one thing, it's seen a great race today. It's the home of the largest alpine lake in the United States at 6,250 meters in altitude, but it's a great place to come for bike rides. If you want to, you can ride around the lake. It's 72 miles to ride around the lake. That's around about 110 kilometers. The lake itself is 22 miles long and 12 miles wide. But if you want to come in the winter months, it's a great winter resort. And in fact, in 1960, it was the host of the Olympic Games just over the slopes of Squaw Valley. Itself is regarded as one of the cleanest lakes in the United States, and clear vision goes down to 75 to 100 feet. And that's why the lake appears to be so blue, because it's so clear that it reflects the deep blue skies in this part of the world. So looking at the mountains, we've seen another great day, and another great day by Tom Squeens, almost turning the clock back. All you have to do really is change the color of the jersey, because this young man won a hilltop finish last year, and it's great to see the joy of this youngster at 24 years of age getting himself a victory. This was the point when the race was really starting to get excited. The three leaders had one chaser coming along behind them, Jasper Stuyven, the winner, as we mentioned, of Kuurne-Brussels-Kuurne this year. But at this point, if you look at the face of the young Latvian, he seems to have it all in control.
No, a good chase. He left it all too late, but he got away from everybody else, and so fourth place was always going to be where he finished, I think. These boys were shadow boxing, but you could read the body language of the man in green, because he just looked so confident. He knew he had the beating of Zandio and De Vos. But the two young riders in orange and in green, they dictated this race from that breakaway all day today, and so deservedly they crossed the line in first and second.
Yeah, well, let's not forget the young guy sitting in third position there in that orange jersey of Rally Racing, who's been great. He's still only 22 years of age. As Stuyven left it, he kept climbing closer and closer, but it was a few kilometers too close from the end. You just see Stuyven just a little bit further back there, trying to get across there. He had the power, he'd made the move, but it was just too big a gap for him to try and get across. And I think at the end of the day, when he looks at his result, he'll be quite satisfied with fourth place on a very difficult hilltop finish. Even at this point, as dropping down into third position, Squeens in third place there was quite confident, just watching the performance of his other compatriots in the breakaway there, trying to decide when he was going to make the move. They pulled out the referee's car, and it was all really basically waiting for the final sweeper to the left-hand side before they made the big acceleration into the finishing straight. Zandier, 39 years of age, hasn't won a race since the Tour of Burgos back in 2008, but it was going to go down to the two men in the orange jersey, De Vos, and in the lime green jersey, a winner of a stage of the Amgen Tour of California last year, Tom Squeens. Huge crowd had turned out on the finishing line to witness this fifth stage of the Amgen Tour of California. The riders had moved away from Lodi in the early part of the day for this 212-kilometer ride. Stuyven, well, he kept eating into the advantage, but mainly that was because there was little cat and mouse tactics going on with that leading group of three riders. And as they came around that finishing straight, when it was the moment to really open up the gas, it was never any question at all about Stuyven, getting up to the leaders, but the acceleration then coming from Squeens, a big acceleration. He was in the right gear and all the way to the line, just looking over his shoulder to confirm that, yes, he got this one in the bag, and he moves across the line to get himself the stage victory. So, as we look at the overall standings, on the eve of the individual time trial, there's still 22 seconds separating Peter Stettner from Julien Alaphilippe. George Bennett comfortably there in third. Bookwalter could be a danger because he's a good he's a good individual time trialist in fourth. But Rowan Dennis and Sanchez are also dangerous.
So we're waiting now to receive the yellow jersey on the shoulders again for the third day. of the man now in his racing colours of Ethics Quick Step, and Julien Alaphilippe still in the lead. He won't be ultra confident tomorrow, I don't think, in the time trial, because this is probably his weakest element.
Well, I think it is, and the big power that Team BMC have got, they've got 3 very strong individual time trialists inside of the top 10. You've got Sammy Sanchez in 8th, Rowan Dennis in 7th, and of course Brent Bookwalter, who at 40 seconds is not a bad individual time trialist. But even if this youngster, Julien Alaphilippe, loses a little bit of time in the individual time trial tomorrow, there's an exciting stage on Saturday around Santa Rosa with lots of climbs to come. He looks comfortable, and from a man who's really fought back from glandular fever, mononucleosis, he's looking more and more confident as the days go by. But 20 kilometers, the individual time trial, is a very tough call for everybody. And that individual time trial, which lines up tomorrow, is based around the famous Folsom State Prison, made famous by, of course, the great country and western singer Johnny Cash. Looking down at the views that we've had as we climb up into these alpine views of California on the outskirts of South Lake Tahoe, it's been a great day of racing. Going to the victory to Tom Screens as we head down to the time trial tomorrow in Folsom City. On behalf of Christian van der Velde and Phil Liggett, I'm Paul Sherwin saying, come back tomorrow. There may be some changes at the top of the overall leaderboard. Goodbye.